Wait, did you already watch this? You traded?
No,
Okay.
don't panic.
Okay.
I just actually formed memories about this show, sort of. I can go into it when the theme song plays now.
Welcome to Your Inner Child's an Idiot, the podcast where we look back on things from our childhood and see if they're any good. My name is DJ.
And my name is Damon. Hello.
Damon, you're looking very fit, like you've been watching He-Man and training so that you have the pectoral muscles, the six-pack muscles. I'm sure those have a name. I think they're called six-packs.
Mm-hmm. They're called six-packs. I even had my nipples removed surgically so I could be more like He-Man.
You want to get those. Kids can't be looking at nips.
No, that would be a bridge too far. But otherwise, this S&M cartoon should go over well.
If you haven't guessed, we're watching He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, right? We got to say the full title.
Is that the full title? I mean, I remember the toys had Masters of the Universe, but I always called it He-Man.
Yeah.
I guess
as a
it
kid,
is.
we all just called it He-Man, but I think it's called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And then the movie, which I don't really have strong memories of, was I think just called Masters of the Universe.
I remember seeing the movie and I remember being very confused because, I mean, it was one of those, I mean, not to get too much into it, sexually confused. Yes. I mean, you can say that about anything. Even watching Animaniacs, I was sexually confused. Why is Brain's head so big? But in Masters of the Universe, they don't spend much time in the He-Man land. They spend most of the time in 1980s New York, which was a thing in fucking 80s movies, especially adapted things where it's like, I can't afford to build an Eternia and a Castle Grayskull. Yeah. What if we just go to Vancouver, claim it's New York, and call it a day?
It was basically a worse Crocodile Dundee is what I'm imagining.
Everyone was Crocodile Dundeeing. Crocodile Dundee 2, mind you.
What's the sword for? It's for washing your backside. I hope not.
No.
Adam. That's his name, right? Adam.
No, Prince.
That's his
Prince Adam. Put respect on his name.
You're absolutely right. I forgot the title. Did you watch this like as a kid? The cartoon?
This is a show where I can tell you that I watched it every day. I owned so many toys. I had Castle Grayskull. I had some sort of little skeleton thing, where the ribs, like, they came out from the skeleton and they formed almost like a little Lego man's U, and you could stick the action fingers into the ribs, and it was some sort of like traveling thing,
I had
like
that
a sort
too,
of omnibus of Eternia.
Yeah.
That being said, despite this being one of the core pieces of my childhood, I have almost no memories of He-Man, what He-Man was about, why was Skeletor so mad at everyone, but enjoying himself so much. In fact, most of my knowledge of He-Man comes from the fact that I recently did a drawing about He-Man for like a series I was doing with another artist on Instagram at Zach Morissette or Zachsploitation. And that was it was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this lady who had a sort of cobra cowl that she wore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I kind of remember Evelyn. I guess the land they lived in was Eternia. Okay. It wasn't even memories flooding back. I was like, that must be right. That's what this article says.
Right. Yeah, no, I have the exact same situation where it was a huge part of my childhood. Like, I remember watching the cartoon all the time. I would have said that was my favorite cartoon, but it was like right before the Ninja Turtles phase for me. Right before, I guess it would have been around the same time as G.I. Joe, but I wasn't as into G.I. Joe, I think. Mm-hmm. And this was maybe a little bit before that, too. And I had
also, apparently right before our brains started creating long-term memories.
Well, it's like it had no impact what exactly we were watching. It was just like, that was cool. That's a cool sword. That guy's got a skeleton face. Into that. He's like got a skeleton face, but he's really
skeleton face.
But he's really muscular. This is weird. When you think about it too much, don't worry about it. But I have a strong memory, which is obviously not so much a memory as there was a videotape of it. And that is, so my dad used to make us do these like, he was the video camera guy in our family, and like not just our immediate family, but like in our branch of the family. So he would always be the one that had the camera, and they'd be like, "Oh, great, here he comes." And then, but of course, it's super great later because you can watch all this crazy footage. And he would make us, my sisters and I, do these like news programs, and in theory, it sounds really fun, but none of us wanted to do it, and so it was more like he's like, "This will be fun," and we were all like, I don't really want to do this. And then we kind of wanted to do it, and then we don't.
You can't declare fun.
Yeah.
Fun can only be identified after the fact. You can't pre-identify fun.
I don't know if
At
it was
least
just
that's
like,
my rule.
Like, that sounds like a blast to me now, which just means I am older than my dad was then. So my sisters would do like this news program. They were quite a bit older than me. I was probably like, especially for that age, I was probably like 6, maybe even 5 at this time. So like, really did not have the comedic chops to be doing He-Man commercials, which was my role, is that in between the segments.
You got to work the clubs for a few years before you start doing fake commercials for He-Man.
I hadn't worked
Your
up
dad
my
should have known that.
I
Got you to the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory, just really work in front of a crowd. That live audience is the best feedback you're going to get.
When you start, you just got to get up every time you can get up, you know? But we have this footage of like this news segment, and then we cut to me sitting on like the hearth and just with my basket
like a newscaster would be.
Just like, this was the commercial, and I just had like my basket of He-Man toys, and I'm like holding one, and then he's like, "What's that guy?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like like not into it. It's adorable in retrospect, and also I'm like, "You're fucking terrible at this, DJ."
That is very charming. In regards to your dad, not you. You sounded like you were just dead air. Terrible.
Garbage child. Yeah, garbage.
Don't start talking unless you got something. That's what your dad should have said. The whose line is it anyway rules. Don't start if you don't have something yet.
This was also before editing was invented. So he could have probably chopped it up into something good, but it was not possible. They didn't allow it.
You know, a film really comes together in the editing room, and your dad should have known that too. I am also having a memory, a sense memory, that I had some sort of, I feel like I have don't say harder. I have more concrete memories of the toys themselves rather than the show.
Yeah.
And I think at one point for Christmas, I got some sort of slime mechanism. And it was essentially this like archway, like it was probably like a foot tall. And it had like a cup at the top that you could put green slime, He-Man branded green slime.
Yeah.
And then you'd put like one of your characters underneath it and basically just flip the cup over. He gets slimed. That slime got into the cupboard where we kept our VHS tapes.
Oh, no.
So every time we opened it for the next 20 years, there was this big, crusty, hardened piece of green plastic in there for the rest of our days. I'll be buried in that cabinet with a piece of plasticine green slime. So also, there were some characters in the He-Man set that had like almost like a peach fuzz fur to them.
Yes.
And that slime doesn't come out as well on the peach fuzz fur.
Yeah. They didn't really think about that combo.
Or they did, and they were like, kids, get your parents to buy you another Beast Man.
Gotta buy another one. Was this one where they had the toys first and then?
This is a Transformers situation. I only know that, again, because of the toys that made us on Netflix.
Right,
I think we watched an episode
now
of that.
Show it on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think they had an episode on He-Man, and they literally created the toys. And then they were like, I don't know, they could live in a place called Eternia. Go with it. Evelyn, sure, whatever. I got this skeleton head that doesn't go with a toy. Just put it on a Muscle Man and paint it purple. Skeletor, done. Here's your villain.
I think, like kids are always somewhat idiots because their brains aren't fully formed. But like we were really idiots because they were like, these fuckers were so cynical. They would just like be like, literally the product first. And then they're like, I don't know, make it flash on the screen. And
get some really shitty animation going where they're just running in front of a rotating background for like 3 minutes straight.
Listen, lowest bid wins the work. Let's do this. And we ate it up. That's the worst thing. The worst thing isn't that they did this. Of course, it's capitalism. Go for it. But it's us, the dumb children. It was our fault.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting this to be good. How about you? I think it's going to be awful.
I imagine this will be just low rent crap.
I am kind of part of the reason that I wanted to do this now is that I am looking forward to watching the new He-Man that just came out.
Yeah.
And I feel like because we have a podcast where we talk about things around it, we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the audience,
Sure.
the listening public, to review this, but then also to have people pay to hear us review the new thing by being a Patreon. Patreon.com/.
It's the right thing to do, and it's capitalism. In the spirit of He-Man, let's just put out a bunch of like cheap crap and see what people will buy. Anyway, and become a patron at yourinachalsendidiot.com.
Speaking of that, we'll be right back after this message from us about us. You'll never support a podcast that you like on Patreon?
That's where you're wrong, Skeletor. I'm currently typing in the domain name for yourinnerchildsandidiot.com.
No! We have a voicemail from our patron Vincent, and we're going to listen to what he has to say real quick.
Hi, DJ and Damon. Good afternoon. My name is Vincent, and I'm a long-time listener. It's my first-time caller. I just wanted to call and say something about my so-called life. This was something that was really important to me and my friends our last year of high school. It really spoke to our underrepresented, white, upper-class teenage ennui. And we were all in love with Claire Danes. And after the show was canceled after one season, we desperately saved every episode to VHS. And since this was in the time before the internet, we wrote letters on paper with stamps letting the network know that they couldn't cancel MSCL, or how else would we get to see Claire Danes, or find out what happened when Rayanne actually finally OD'd for real. Obviously, the networks didn't listen to our well-reasoned arguments that the Nielsen ratings weren't capturing our massive heterosexual teenage male demographic. Later in college, I attempted to rewatch these coveted VHS cassettes, and I found my so-called life unbearable. It was what you get when writers who've never experienced homelessness, discrimination, child abuse, broken marriages, what they imagine those experiences are like through the privileged suburban lens. So the verdict, my inner child was an idiot. It took leaving the comfort of my childhood home to realize what even those out-of-touch TV execs knew. The market for gritty pablum was only ankle deep. The second twister, Damon is correct. Other than Helen Hunt's shower scene, which the two of you were too gentlemanly to mention, and the finale with the F5, this movie was immemorable. And maybe I'm a terrible person, but when I watched this movie for the first time and Joe's dad was sucked out into the storm while grasping the basement door, I laughed out loud. And finally, guys, I know it was a bit, but PSA, if you are ever actually in an earthquake, please don't run into a closet. Thank you for brightening my days with your humor. I look forward to future eps. You may air this if you want. My favorite cookies are oatmeal raisin. Have a great day, guys. Take care.
Thank you very much, Vincent. I really appreciate the message, and I really appreciate the information about your earthquakes, because I was told to beseech the heavens, go outside at all costs, thrust yourself upon the ground, pound it, and beseech God for help. That was what I was told. But I'm from Ohio, so what do I know?
That's true. It's public schooling. I was told to kill a goat and hope that the smoke reaches Mount Olympus.
I don't have anything to add to his because I feel like he said what he needed to say.
He brought up some good points, and I mean, we talked about the awkward and frank take that Claire Danes has in the thing, which I think is very akin to the other points you made about a very someone who's never experienced homelessness or any of those other problems doing some hot takes on it. That was an awkward part that does not age well. But I think overall, I think we were right, and Vincent was wrong. That's how I'm going to phrase it.
It's almost like you can have different opinions on these things.
No.
We really appreciate it, Vincent. If you want to leave a message like him, 615-576-0525. And we are back. We watched a tranche of He-Man episodes.
A sextet of He-Man episodes.
And boy, did we watch them.
We watched them and we watched them.
I did something that I should be doing ever since about 6 years into this podcast. I've first finally started figuring out how to do things. So I actually wrote down a recap for each episode. So I will, as much as you would like me to, I'm ready to recap.
No, I'm going to light a J. Go ahead.
Okay, so we started with, obviously, season 1, episode 1. By the way, are there only 2 seasons of this?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's pretty, because I remember when we did Tiny Toons, like, I think it's very common
like
to
100
do.
episodes.
Yeah, there's 65 episodes in season 1, 65 episodes, so they can just run them into syndication, into the fucking ground like lunatics.
And then we're like, we're out of here.
I think there is
Deuces.
some contest on whether this is actually episode 1. I think it's the first in production, 20th to air. This one.
Oh, what was the first to air?
I did take a look after realizing there may be some episode number confusion. I watched the Diamond of Disappearance, which is the first aired episode, thinking, oh, this is probably where they established the mythos and all the characters' relationships with each other. All I can say, DJ, is don't worry about it.
Okay.
You got as much information as you would have gotten watching episode 1, season 1,
I kind of figured
1.
that. Well, we'll get into that. So this is at least what's marked as season 1, episode 1, the Cosmic Comet. Skeletor harnesses the power of the Cosmic Comet and tries to destroy
As opposed
Castle
to a
Grayskull.
non-cosmic comet, which is also known as a rock.
You could just say comet. An ice snowball. He harnesses the power of the Cosmic Comet and tries to destroy Castle Grayskull to rule Eternia.
Which I don't think we need to explain. It's 1 + 1 = 2.
Don't worry about what either of those things are. With the help of He-Man and his friends, the wizard Azagres recreates a second cosmic comet, which, by the way, he had already destroyed on accident, kind of causing this whole chain of events,
which
restores the balance and spares Eternia.
Yeah, that is
a valuable lesson.
Do you want to recap? I don't have a lot to say about each episode, but we can. You want to just sort of what were your thoughts on this one, or you do want to keep on recapping?
No. Let's do. I have a little bit for each thing at least. I mean, the title immediately brought me back. I watched.
Comet.
Well, no, just the title sequence.
Oh, I see what you mean.
There's a very, and I think this was relatively common in this era of cartoon, is like the title sequence is long and explains the premise.
Yes.
And there's a lot of details in it. But immediately I was like, oh, right, this. Having watched this title sequence probably hundreds of times as a kid, I remembered it.
Well, it's also that title sequence is largely the same. I mean, that sequence of him holding aloft He-Manibur, his sword, holding it up, and then the lightning and the castle and the what have yous, and Cringer turning into Battle Cat. That happens literally every episode.
Yes.
So I don't know if I remember the theme song as much as I remember seeing this sequence of events about 600 times in my childhood.
Yeah, because they show it in the intro, but then again, at least once per episode. I mean, it's generally once per episode. Whenever he decides to become He-Man, if he's not already, he does that again. It's the exact same animation. Not only is it the same thing that happens, but it's the exact same animation. So, like, you've seen this. But
just in case you tuned in 4 minutes late, here it is again, him turning into He-Man and Battle Cat.
Well, I was kind of surprised. There's a lot to remember up top. Now, if you're watching multiple episodes, it kind of like, okay, I get it now, because he explains it in the title sequence explains it every time. But at first you're like, okay, Cringer, okay, he becomes Battle Cat, okay, and then there's
he grows slightly to become Battle Cat.
Yeah, and he's just a normal guy that looks exactly the same who becomes He-Man.
Mm-hmm. You will notice his Pantone colors of his skin and his hair change slightly, but are still in the same color family.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like people would know this. It's not like if my friend went to, Destin and came back, I'd be like, who the fuck are you?
Who is this?
Are you some sort of space S&M god? Oh, it's just you, Adam. Sorry.
Even if they were wearing the sort of like the thing that his vest.
Metal chest plate thing.
Yeah. You'd still be like, did you get that in Destin or did you bring it?
I did find the theme song oddly frustrating because it's vague on the things I need more information about and very specific about the things I don't need more information about. For example, he describes his powers as fabulous powers. End. Full stop. That's the description of his powers. And then he goes into how many people know his secret and who they are, their names, and what relationship they have with him. I'm like, I feel like that would be covered in the show, so you probably don't need to recap that literally every episode. But maybe if you could tell me what the powers of He-Man. We're in the episode. Okay, that's the title card. Okay, we're already in it. I'm talking over dialogue. Okay, sorry, my apologies.
It doesn't seem. I mean, this is a superhero trope too, where it's like, what is exactly the point of the secret identity in this case? Like,
yeah, well, yeah, that was another concern I had, is why even bother? Because he usually spends about 90 seconds as Prince Adam before all shit breaks loose, and he and
they're like, give him a tan and put some reverb on his voice. We gotta get into action.
Get him that marigold wig to replace his canary yellow wig.
Definitely something I noticed and wanted to talk about is how jacked Skeletor is. And everyone, really.
No, everyone is out of control. They all have the same, all the men at least, have the same body type. Literally, there is no thin but toned man in Eternia. Everyone is just jacked beyond belief. If you are the king of Eternia, if you're Prince Adam, if you're, Whiplash, if you're Skeletor, a man who has no flesh on his head, but has all the flesh in the world on his body, everyone is the exact same thing. And I think that, is because we can just draw the same body and just sort of change out the costume.
Well, it makes for a good action figure, which is the real point.
That is true. As I said in the intro, I did have a lot of He-Man toys, and they all have literally the same body type, spray painted over. It's this weird body, jack body, and the furry underpants, boots, and just if you're Skeletor, they paint you blue. If you're He-Man, they paint you orange.
Not Beastman orange. That's a different orange.
No, that's a very specific orange. And he gets the peach fuzz. They dip you in like some sort of adhesive and roll you in the peach fuzz. I had all that garbage. I even had battle damage He-Man, where you could hit him in the chest and this little thing would flip and it would show like a dent in his armor, which is not really a facet of He-Man's personality.
Did you have the van, the fucking like weird rubber band wheel van that they have?
No, the mystery machine.
It was basically the mystery machine, but with like
have that.
not tracks like you'd expect.
No, not like tank
actual
treads.
Vehicles have, but they just like flip. They're like basically like elongated hula hoops on each wheel,
and I roll. Yeah. And it feels like that would be an unnervingly bumpy ride. Like that's not going to get you anywhere. That's why no one invented that. Like sometimes in sci-fi, you're like, that's cool. And sometimes in shitty sci-fi, you're like, no, there's a reason they wouldn't do triangular wheels, because that would be horrible. No one wants that.
That doesn't do what we've decided wheels should do.
See, wheels make it a smooth ride. If I wanted to just hop up and down, I'd just ride the fucking horse like I was just a minute ago.
Something I forgot about He-Man, but happened in some other cartoons of this era, like G.I. Joe, for example. There's a lesson at the end, and they break the fourth wall and talk to you at home and say, kind of recap what the lesson is. In this case, the wizard Zagorez makes a universe-ending mistake, and they're all like, "It's cool. We all make mistakes," which I kind of appreciate. And they're
was
like,
it Man-at-Arms who gave us the lesson this time?
I think it was, and he was like, "Listen, we all make huge mistakes with enormous universal consequences. Don't worry about it. You let your friends help you out.
You got to try again." That's what Man-at-Arms said. Man of Arms, Man-at-Arms, or Man of War.
Man-at-Arms.
Yes. Okay. I did like that. However, I want to, and this will be a repeating theme. This will be a leitmotif in my review of this, but there is not an opportunity that He-Man ever misses to take animation shortcuts. Mm-hmm. G.I. Joe, for example, did have the lessons at the end of their things, but usually it was new animation of like, oh man, let's play with this live wire that fell off of this telephone pole. And then, Sergeant Slaughter would come out and go, no kids, don't do that. And then It was an all new sequence. This is just, let's recap what it is, and then we're going to cut away to show you the exact thing you just watched. Like at the end of an 80s sitcom when it's like the minor key theme song and they just show clips of what you just watched.
Reminiscing. Yeah, we're reminiscing.
Remember this 30 seconds
1 minute ago.
Remember when Dorothy came in and slammed the door and Rose asked her a question? Well, those were crazy times. So this is just recycled animation from earlier, which is the reason that He-Man exists. I noticed there was a weird occurrence in this that I've never caught in animation, but I'm sure it was used quite often in these shitty animated shows, but there was a lot of cutaways when someone was talking. Either the person who's speaking, the camera, quote, quote, camera is behind them, and so you just sort of see their head moving up and down, but you don't actually have to see their lips synchronizing with the words. Or there was one scene, not in this episode, but a few episodes later, where the sorceress is in her familiar falcon form, and she's just circling overhead, and it's just a shot of a hawk circling or a falcon circling, and she's talking the entire time, but the hawk is just, it's like 2 minutes long of this shot of the hawk just going in the same circle over and over again, and it's slightly too fast. Like hawks wouldn't fly this fast in a circle, so it becomes quite comical where I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Why'd you make an animated show if you didn't want to animate anything? And they were like, we have these toys to sell. And we're like, oh, that's...
Yeah. Oh,
I
okay.
see.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk... Can we talk about Zagraz real quick? Because actually, this actually is counter to my point that every man in Eternia has the same body shape. Because Zagraz looks like he was dumped in from those Hanna-Barbera racing cartoons. Do you remember that? He looks like he's Dastardly and Muttley's grimy next-door neighbor. He just looks like... He kind of looks like Tommy Chong.
Do you all have some drugs?
He looks like Tommy Chong, and he sounds like Ed Wynn. So he talks like this. It's very distracting. And I was like, oh, this is fun. Is this Ed Wynn? It wasn't Ed Wynn. It's just a guy doing an Ed Wynn impression, but it is fun to hear. Side note, one time I was reading the Huffington Post around when Wreck-It Ralph came out, and this LGBTQ contributor was angry at the homophobic nature of the Sugar King or the King of Candy?
King Candy.
And he was
Alan
so
Tudyk.
angry that Alan Tudyk would do this impression of a gay man. And I was so infuriated. I'm like, he is doing an impression of Ed Wynn, you jackass. A person who was the voice of the Mad Hatter. He was Uncle Albert and Mary Poppins, and I'm sure he was in a bunch of other shit that I'm not as familiar with. But that's what he sounded like. You got a problem with Ed Wynn? Go take it to his grave.
Well, I guess that's the problem if you when making a reference like that is like, this person probably was not around when, or has never seen anything about that. And Orko is like that. We have this little like wizard sidekick Orko who's got more of the wacky. I mean, Cringer a little bit, but obviously Cringer turns more into the hardened Battle Cat. But like the muscly action figure characters, and then the cartoony Hanna-Barbera kind of vibe. And there was like mostly the muscle bound people, but then there's like Orko, and then there's Zagraz, and then a couple of others as we go along that are just kind of like the wacky boop 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 cartoon.
Cringer is very Scooby-Doo. And Cringer, again, just like Prince Adam, he's usually on Cringer for 90 seconds, and then let's battle cat him up. I did notice Zagraz is like this, and then some of the monsters in later episodes, you can tell when it's a one-off character that will never be seen or heard from again because they are just like coasting on the character design. Like anyone who's not going to be repeated, it's just like stick figure, fine, whatever. Like all the monsters, they all look terrible. Like all the monsters who are just in one episode, I mean, all look absolutely terrible, especially when they're next to these very detailed character designs for He-Man. Don't get me wrong, the animating these characters is shit, but the actual character design is like well detailed because they know they're just going to reuse it over and over and over again.
Yeah, and
but Zagraz,
make an action figure out of it.
Yeah, Zagraz looks like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon, as does Cringer, has a Scooby-Doo vibe. As do a lot of the, what was that weird monster with the whip hands?
Ooh, What was it?
Maldrum, Malden salt.
Mulcrum.
Mulcrum, yes. A Mulcrum is a simple machine. There's like something you pull.
Got a lever, a Mulcrum.
You've got a pulley.
The next episode we watched was Tila's Quest, which is marked as season 1, episode 6. May I?
Oh no, by all means, because I literally formed no short-term memories of these episodes.
Tila decides. Tila is
Tila Tequila.
Yeah.
She had the most friends on MySpace.
So Tila Tequila, the most friends on MySpace. No, what is she? She's like is she the love interest or sister type character for He-Man?
I was very confused for a long time. I believe she is the captain of the Royal Guard and a potential love interest for He-Man. She's also the adopted daughter of Man-at-Arms.
Yeah, and she has like some disdain for Prince Adam, thinks he's an oaf, but is like into He-Man. Tila decides to find out more about who her real parents are and gets captured by Merman in the process. She's rescued by He-Man and Man-at-Arms and his friends, and finds out that the sorceress is her biological mom. Man-at-Arms agreed to raise her, but then she gets her memory wiped.
But He-Man doesn't. This pissed me off. So the sorceress, when she finally reveals that she is her biological mother, immediately wipes her memory and then tells He-Man, can you keep that secret for me? And I'm like, why? First off, why can't she know you're her biological mother? Apparently the idea is, actually, I mean, I can't even say, that's a strong word. There's an idea behind it. But the sorceress says that Tila will take her place once she's, bit the big one.
Oh, once she's gone.
When the sorceress is dead. But then she wipes her memory, and I'm like, why? She doesn't explain why she can't know this now. And then she also doesn't explain why it's cool that He-Man knows, but Tila can't know.
Well, I think it's clear that men can be trusted and women can't. I mean, it's just normal.
What is He-Man? I don't understand. Like, why is there an alter ego? Why can't he just be He-Man? Here's another thing that drives me insane. There's Eternia, and we see establishing shots of Eternia, and it's pink, and it's lush, full of vegetation.
Yes.
And then anytime he pulls out the sword, we get Castle Grayskull in the background, and it looks like a fucking Yes album out there. It's just like rocks and shit strewn all over the place. I think Tyler was watching a few episodes, and this is my favorite thing. He just started yelling, "What are we trying to save? This place looks like shit." There's no one around. It's just rocks, but we have to keep Skeletor from taking over Castle Grayskull, or else he'll be like in charge of the worst run golf course in the world. It's so ugly. Anyway, is Castle Grayskull in Eternia? It feels like it's in another dimension. It doesn't look like it's in the same place as Eternia.
Maybe that's one of the secrets. They keep talking about the secrets of Grayskull. Oh. Maybe it's that it's like Grayskull's in Idaho.
It's outside of Boise. About 4 acres. Right by a highway, though. So
so
just keep that in mind.
We learned something interesting in this is that Mom is from Earth.
The Queen.
The Queen. She was an astronaut and like got lost on a mission and like landed on Eternia, and
an Earth astronaut, to be clear.
An Earth astronaut. Yeah. We learned more about this in one of the later episodes that we watched, but this is the first glimpse of it, and it's like, oh, that's actually a pretty cool twist.
Yeah.
Is that now I wanted more of that, and we do get more of that later, but I thought that was interesting. One of the few because this is we start getting into some Greek mythology level shit here with like, true biological parents and then memory wiping and then like, someone this is like, oh, this
Destiny.
is some family drama shit. And that little tidbit was like, oh, I want to know more about that though.
Yeah, that was interesting. And I thought, oh, well, that's maybe why everyone looks like humans. But then in that later episode, when we see more of it, she lands and the king looks just like a human. I'm like,
they were already there. Yeah.
So what?
Well, and there's lots of theories about seeding, that happened from Eternia to Earth.
Is that a true thing? Is that there are theories?
No. I mean, there are theories about life on Earth, maybe coming from other planets, but I don't
maybe
think
one of those
Eternia
planets
specifically.
is Eternia.
So another thing, may I bring up an interesting, or a more disturbing than interesting thing I noticed in this episode?
Disturbing things often are very interesting, so by all means.
Well, this is the first episode. Well, this is only the second episode we watched, so there might have been other ones, but so this is the first time we see that Cringer doesn't like being turned into Battle Cat.
Yeah, I did pick up on that.
And then also Battle Cat is like a different character. Like Battle Cat speaks and is speaking like he's not Cringer. He's like, don't turn me. He doesn't say don't turn me back into Cringer like Cringer does, but he's like talking. I'm like, what is going on here? Is it a split personality thing, or are these two different creatures living in the same body? Is it like that was really messed up?
Yeah, that it was. The second time I watched it, it was a little weird that Cringer's like, I don't want to be Battle Cat or whatever he says. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then you're going to force him to do that? Even though you have many modes of transportation.
You don't need him.
You don't need to ride a tiger. Also, he seems so big that it would be hard to ride a tiger. You'd be your legs would be splayed out in a weird. I mean, it's the largest cat on Earth.
Harness.
And this cat is enlarged slightly, as we see every time we turn on an episode of He-Man, but just slightly. It's always just a little. It's always funny to me. I'm like, just 33%. That's fine. That's as much as I need from a Battle Cat.
And also, he has like a armored mask,
right?
And harness.
But yeah, I did because Battle Cat has a few lines, and Battle Cat, the entity, has a few lines in this, which makes me think
kind of more of a Tony the Tiger vibe to him.
Right? A thorough Ravencroft came in just to do the parts of Battle Cat. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like a very different thing than He-Man and Adam. So I don't know, and I've got a feeling that the show doesn't know either. Will you buy the fucking Cringer action figure or what?
Yeah, it's one of those things that doesn't really matter. It's kind of like in the Cars universe, are people driving these cars? You know what I mean? Like if you think about it too much. It's like, you know what? Don't worry about it. But this is just like they started it. You know what I mean? I wasn't wondering that because like Prince Adam isn't like, no, don't turn me into He-Man. He is.
He makes a conscious choice.
Yeah.
To become He-Man, whereas Cringer just gets a laser shot at him and he enlarges 45% at most and gets this weird helmet and apparently his entire personality changes.
Yeah.
A Jekyll and Hyde type deal.
It's very strange.
With less canes to the head in the Jekyll and Hyde universe.
And the episode that we saw.
That's true. I mean, I don't know what Battle Cat's doing on his off time. I also had a question. This is just sort of a technical question, but is Man-at-Arms wearing this all the time?
His uniform?
His little uniform, but it also has like a highlight scoop in front of him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's always just there.
Well,
and it seems like it would be really involved. Like there's no like casual, because I remember having, you had the clips on the action figures. You clip their little armor on. Can he not clip his off and just sit around? It seems like it would be just too much.
When it seemed, I don't know if you noticed that like the rest of the soldiers, the Eternia soldiers, like wear like the complete version of that, where there's like a top to it sometimes. And it made more sense.
And sometimes it conveniently covers their mouth when they're talking. Sometimes the helmet just covers that part, so you just have to look at their eyebrows. Convenient.
It made more sense as a uniform, but it was also like, so is he just always going casual? It's like he's always got a like an untied bow tie.
Well, I don't think the other guards, they have a different helmet, but they don't have the highlight scoop that's right in front of his mouth. That seems like it would be. There's a scene where He-Man gets knocked down. It's not this episode, but later on, and he looks down, and I'm like, technically, you wouldn't be able to see him because you've got that weird scoop on your your armor. You can't see your fucking feet.
Did you notice this episode was the first? We're definitely going to get into more of this, just general homoeroticism, but there was a very homoerotic like He-Man pushing leg exercise moment in this one.
Oh yeah,
he was like grunting and pushing, and it was just like okay, all right, okay.
He was trying to Merman releases some some Lovecraftian monster from the depths of time and space or whatever.
It's not important. It's going to be poorly designed.
It's controlled by the Red Pearl. As most monsters are, they're controlled by some sort of item that
just makes sense. That's
just introduced literally while they're telling me it controls the monster. The plan backfires, you'll be surprised to find out, and Merman almost gets killed. He-Man, being a good person, that's kind of his thing. He saves Merman, but Ethel Merman. And he has to then defeat the monster, who is like on this sort of crystal tower, because of course we're in the Crystal Sea, where the Oracle of the Crystal Sea lives. Oh my God.
Okay, yeah.
And he has to push him down with his little He-Man legs, and by little He-Man legs, I mean massive, meaty thighs. And there's a lot of grunting and sort of throwing his head back in an excited way. It's an interesting show, is what I'm saying.
This was a good. I like this lesson recap, which was, found families deserve love too. Found families are important too, because even though, it's a little bit different because Man-at-Arms is her adopted father, but it's like,
even though she just calls him Man-at-Arms, I'm like, you can call him Dad if you want. Don't do it on my account that I don't know these characters' names, because I guarantee you I will be forgetting them shortly.
Yeah. Oh, you mean MAA? That's what I call him.
I trained in
like
MAA.
Rick or something.
No one except Adam. Adam gets a fucking normal name.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was a weird thing, and this comes up later on too with Sorceress, where they try and do an interesting thing with women in general, where Tila is like, oh, I've got to go consult with the Oracle of the Crystal Sea because he'll be able to tell me who my mother is. And He-Man, when he finds out when Orko spills the beans, He-Man's like, oh, she's a tough warrior, but even she will be no match for the dark beasts of the Crystal Sea. Some garbage. And it does that several times in other episodes we watched, where it will put women in distress, but also like try and like add this caveat of like, but she's really tough, but these monsters are really something. So you got to be careful out there, ladies. It was a weird thing. I couldn't tell if I absolutely hated it or if I wanted to give it a small modicum of credit for at least making an effort that I think a lot of other 80s shows wouldn't do.
She is tough.
Right. It's like, we'll say she's tough. She's also the captain of the guard, and usually can hold, usually when she gets captured, everyone else is also in the process of getting captured. This was just an instance where
she went off.
She was chained to a rock, much like Andromeda in Clash of the Titans, and almost fed to a monster, which is a very sexist trope. But I really got to hand it to them for that 4-second line of "she's real tough," but. So what I'm saying is, this is pretty much just Betty Friedan as a writer for He-Man, I assume.
Okay, Reign of the Monster, Season 1, Episode 16.
This one I had to stop it because I got so...
So
bored.
This one is wacky. Okay. Skeletor steals the Staff of Avium from the Merman, not to be confused with Merman, who we just saw in the previous episode.
Oh, I thought they were Torgs. Are they not called Torgs?
He calls them mermen at some point. Maybe it was a audio mistake, but I was like, they're the mermen? You just named a character merman.
No, you're right.
Torgs is later, right?
Torgs are the miners. He doesn't steal it from them. The Torgs are the weird mining people that we have never seen before since. Also very sexual costumes, little pink loincloths. Otherwise, just beefy, hairless men with mustaches. And like Pete Rose haircuts.
Oh yeah, that's right. They all have like the page boy. So Skeletor steals the Staff of Avium from the merman to
what are
free
the powers of the Staff of
Well, I'll tell you, if you let me finish this one sentence recap, which is that you can use it to free the horse demon Malcom from its crystal prison.
And that's its only purpose.
I don't know what other purpose it has. Eventually, He-Man and his buddies recapture Malcom and chase Skeletor away. I guess the other thing it can do is put it back in the crystal prison.
Yeah, and it also will explode and destroy half of Eternia, but if it does explode, it just comes back later?
Yeah, it did explode.
Yeah.
But it was like not even like a bad fireworks situation.
He-Man
like,
threw it into
like,
space using his powers.
Yeah.
And it exploded, and then
Fabulous
it just
powers.
came back.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't get. What's your problem?
You're right. Yeah, obviously, the problem was with me.
What don't you understand about the word fabulous? Let me ask you.
Otherwise, it's a common usage that Stratos, who is some sort of flying monkey man,
Guy. Yeah.
who wears goggles. He kind of looks like a Space Ghost also ran, but
Yeah.
apparently he's in the He-Man world.
He's king of the mermen, but not merman.
It also shoots fireworks. He shows, because He-Man says, "What does that trident do, Stratos?" And he goes, "Look," and he points it, and then it shoots fireworks into the air. So that's something it can do.
At some point, I don't know. I just put this in quotes. I don't know what the context was, but apparently He-Man says, "Just mussed my hair."
I did see, what's her name? Tila asked him if he's okay, and he's holding his hair, and it's obvious that they had to reanimate it. They were like, "Oh shit, we got to do something new on the model." Because some fucking writer wrote something about hair being messed up, so now I gotta draw a whole cell. His hair, but it makes it, the way they've drawn it, it makes it look like He-Man has a comb over, because he's holding it at such an angle that a large portion of his scalp is visible, which I liked this fanciful version of He-Man that I have now, where he is completely bald. I wanted to mention, because the Torgs are sort of the underlings of Skeletor for this special
There
episode.
is army of muscly men.
His oiled up miner men.
Very sexy.
They attack Stratos' people, the mermen, or merman.
Eugene Merman.
They're coming in spaceships, which I was bothered by because they have spaceship technology, but they do not have shirt technology.
Well,
They mastered interstellar
that's just
flight.
assuming parallel evolution. You can't.
That's true.
assume
You know
that.
what? You're absolutely right. And I apologize to the Torks. I'll have to do a notes app post.
Yeah, post
on
that to Instagram. We also got the He-Man space jet ski. So they've got advanced space technology because he busts out his little space wave runner.
Oh yeah, those
first
little.
time.
Yeah, that's great. I like that because that's
Pretty
also some
poetic.
animation you can reuse over and over again. Is someone sitting on one of those space wave runners in profile?
I tell you, I want the toy. So
Me and Tyler noticed that some of the steering mechanisms on He-Man's ships seem like they were not ergonomically designed.
Yeah.
Stratos' wife, whose name I didn't catch, ma'am.
Madam?
No, ma'am. Okay. She is driving a spaceship at one point. And it looks like it's like one of those cables you would have at the gym that comes out in a Y,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
but it's rigid, and you have to hold it pretty much above your head. So you'd have to hold your arms at a weird angle the entire time you're flying a spaceship, which seems
You're not
not
take long
good.
flights.
Yeah. It's for short bursts of energy, not for a long, cross-Atlantic flight. The other thing I noticed is with those wave runners is that there's no steering wheel. The steering mechanism is on the two sides of this long tube that runs across the front. So it's almost like a Chinese finger trap. Can I say that? Just a finger trap that you get at Spencer's. But it's wider than your body. So you'd have to reach out far and then curve your hands at a very acute angle to reach into these holes that are on either side. I'm like, just put a wheel on it or a joystick. Why would you ever want
Just
to be in
make
this
it like
position?
a wave runner in real life. It's our motorcycle.
No need. We're going to have it where it's like you're reaching into two tipped over popcorn barrels on the sides of the machine.
We got our first appearance of Ram Man, which I remember the action figure of.
I had that one.
He's one of your favorite characters because he has the personality traits of. Go ahead, Damon. Fill that in.
Yes. He loves the Bronte sisters. That's his favorite thing to read. He likes mysteries, but he doesn't like true crime. That's an interesting thing about Ram Man.
Interesting. Okay.
His mother, she wasn't abusive, but she was very distant. And his father, he thinks, had an alcohol problem, but was fairly functioning alcoholic. So it was hard to actually tell because he was still able to keep a job and everything. He's still on a good relationship with both of them, but he had to remove them from their toxic lifestyle. So that's when he moved to Eternia. I don't have to tell you this.
Right.
He does a lot of macrame. He will readily admit it's not cool. It's very 70s, but he just likes it. It takes him to a sort of a Zen place. And he didn't get his driver's license until he was 18. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. And my favorite fact about Ram Man is that you would think that he was named specifically Ram Man, specifically because he has the shape and service of a ram. He basically serves as a human...
Take form of ram, he might
Eternian
have said.
battering ram. He's got a flat a costume that gives him a flat head and he rams
no
things.
Neck.
But it's actually because he's very into computers.
Oh yeah, like a memory. He likes to have as much RAM in his computer as possible. Interesting.
He just always upgrading his RAM.
It's one of those funny little coincidences of history.
Yeah. Let's talk about Malcom just one more time.
Just one more time. One more time for the road, Malcom.
This is the scariest fucking cartoon thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, really?
This is the horse monster. It's not scary like, oh, well done. It's scary like, what the fuck are we doing?
Okay.
It's a horse demon, so it's got like a very angry horse-ish face, and then it's got, the back legs, and then it's just got like spaghetti arms, just
it's got like little whip, wildly, like squid whip arms,
and they like wrap around, like he uses them as his main weapons, and oh boy,
let's not forget the drag queen style unit he's got on his head. He has a huge like Tammy Wynette bouffant, like blonde hair, not a horse's mane, like a human's scalp of hair, blonde on top of his head. I also like him because he has a horse's head, a man's chest, a human's chest, and then a back to the horse thing. So it was like, they were like, I'm making a horse, I'm making a man, gotcha, horse again. Oof. And while I'm at it, squid arms.
Oh, yeah,
it is very weird.
About that.
It's very silly. Oh, there were horns on him?
Yeah, he's got horns. Ugh, good Lord.
This was another example of like, what the fuck is this?
If you guys want to look this up, Molkrom, Malcom He-Man. Good luck to you. If you want to sleep tonight, wouldn't recommend it.
And all it does is screech at the top of its line. It is not sentient. It's just like
banshee. Yeah, it's like a banshee sort of situation.
And the plan here, just if I can reverse engineer Skeletor's plan, it's to release Malcom as a sort of distraction,
so he can get into Castle Grayskull for the secrets, Damon.
I just can just take a few minutes and tell me what's so important about Castle Grayskull.
Do you know what the word secrets means, Damon?
Yeah, but can you tell me? I already know that Prince Adam and He-Man are the same person, so I can keep a secret.
Wait, what?
So I feel like, just let me in, sorceress. Let me know. Don't push me away.
To Save Skeletor, Season 2, Episode 10 was our next one.
Oh, right. Yeah, sure. Wait, hold on. Do I have anything else to say about this?
Probably.
Oh, I did want to say, I was a little sympathetic for Malcolm's whip arms because as a cartoonist, I can tell you hands are hard. So why not just give them whip arms?
It's the like Rob Liefeld, like, I'm just going to go ahead and just do these little noodles.
Little feet.
All these superheroes are jumping, so you don't need to see their feet. Don't worry about it.
Oh, also, there was a moment where Stratos, the head merman, he is cloned. He is brainwashed by Skeletor and then cloned by Skeletor to attack He-Man and his friends. And then his sister comes out and says, Stratos, you do not want to hurt us. Think about it. And he does. And then he's cured of the brainwashing and kills all the clones. It's like 20 seconds. Mm-hmm. What was the fucking point of that?
It's a challenge, man. You can't have, you can't have an adventure without a little adversity that barely affects your main character at all. Look, all right, we don't have a lot of time in these, okay?
Go ahead. Go over to save Skeletor.
I mean, in He-Man episodes, we don't have a lot of time. We have as long as we want, Damon.
Yeah. That's fucking true. Before we get into Save Skeletor, this is written by Paul Dini. Does that name ring any bells to you?
Paul Dini. So I want to say he invented the potato chip.
That was, of course, Mr. Pringle. Paul Dini helped create, I believe, Batman the Animated Series, and helped write for Tiny Toon Adventures. But I think his big claim to fame is the DC cartoon universe, doing Batman the Animated Series and then Superman after that. Well, so keep an eye out for those roots here in To Save Skeletor. Go for it. Recap me.
Skeletor summons the creature Shigora from an evil dimension. He-Man and his peeps eventually rescue Skeletor and his people, and they team up to send Shigora back to the evil dimension. Shigora is this giant beanbag monster, Cyclops monster.
Also with whips for arms.
Yeah, it's actually a little repeaty having watched these two episodes. It's a similar, not exactly the same plot.
I guarantee you they use the same color brown for these. I mean, Shigora to me looked like a sentient colon. I don't know about you, but that's what he looked like. He also is cycloptic. He only has one eye. Yeah. So my immediate response was, think of the weapon you got in this dungeon and hit him in the eye 3 times.
Absolutely.
Done. Done and done. Shigora out of here.
What did we learn? My favorite thing about Shigora is also it's got a little John Waters mustache, which I like.
It does. I did notice these weird random lines on him, and I can't. The problem with this shitty animation is that I can't tell him, like, is that a wrinkle? Is that a mustache? This is probably the worst example of, like, this is what you came up with, and then you have these detailed characters like Skeletor and He-Man standing right next to what just looks like if you asked a child to draw a monster.
Yeah, it does. It does have that, like, do you remember in The Good Place where they play Pictionary and then the, like, terrible horse he draws, like, come to life? That's Shigora, basically. That's like that's Malcom, really, more than Shigora. But
this is also the first time we saw Whiplash.
Whiplash and Mephisto.
Which one's Mephisto?
The guy with the fist. The big
for fuck's sake. Whiplash, though, I remember both me and Tyler had immediate sense memories when he came on screen. Yeah. I was like, I had Whiplash because his tail was rubber, and so he had a very specific smell in the He-Man box because he smelled like rubber. Because they were like, I guess we have to go all out and put in fucking rubber on these things now. I also want to say this is our first season 2 episode, right?
Yes.
The writing still isn't what I would prefer. I'll say it that way. But you can tell that they're trying to make some sort of effort all of a sudden. Like, Skeletor gets the cold open in these episodes, and he gets to actually be kind of a bitch, which I'm into. He's very bitchy with Beastman and... No, I don't think it's this episode.
But he like Lockjaw and
with Lockjaw and Beastman in the next episode. But he actually gets a few good lines, which I didn't write down. Good, fine lines, I should say. They're fine.
Yeah, it's relative. It's all relative. But yeah, it is like that's an interesting, like, at this point it's like, a sitcom trope is like or a story trope. I don't know about sitcom, but like that you have to team up with the villain because there's an even villainier villain. For them, it's like, oh, see, good job. Like, for this show to use it, even though it's like kind of a trope, it's still like, oh, okay, here's something. Here's, you know what I mean?
It's very weird, though, that this show would do it because Skeletor seems like he's trying to kill everyone. So it seems weird, like, oh no, someone's going to kill Skeletor? Like, yeah. But
I mean, at this point,
Skeletor brought this on himself.
At this point, they've defeated Skeletor almost every episode for like 100 episodes. So they're not really scared of Skeletor.
That's true. He's not really that much of a threat. It's sort of like the drunk tank in Mayberry. They're just like, okay, Skeletor, we're going to put you in here for a little bit, let you sober up, and then we're going to let you go home, okay?
They know he's like, they're not like really worried about what he's going to do next. Did you notice the super breath power that He-Man has now? One of his new fabulous powers?
Oh, I missed this fabulous power. Tell me more.
He just creates, what does he do? I think he creates a little tornado situation or like a haboob situation just by blowing his breath.
Interesting.
It's pretty impressive.
There's no limit to his powers. I did notice that in Eternia in general, freeze ray seems to be the standard ammunition for everyone. No one's doing bullets or even lasers, freeze rays all the way.
Well, there were some, like some, whatever you call the code, the ethics code, cartoon stuff. Like He-Man couldn't use his sword as like a sword.
I did notice he used it to repel beams and projectiles at him. Unfortunately, I can't think of anything else that would be able to do that. So I guess you'd have to use a sword. There's no other way to shield yourself from projectiles.
Yeah, I don't know
what some sort of like barricade between you and the projectiles. Maybe it could be round or even, I don't know, shield shaped.
Yeah, I don't know
you could do that.
What kind of shield item you'd use to shield yourself from?
Yeah, but sword, when you're in a pinch.
Maybe something that goes with a sword often?
Yeah, I mean,
scabbard. No,
where are you going to get a chariot in this time of day?
But counterpoint: a shield does not look like a penis.
That is a good point. And like a penis, I'm sorry. I meant to say penis. It can't shoot lasers at your cat, your pussy cat.
I'm sorry, I penised. I meant a penis. The lesson recap for this one is: don't be afraid to ask for help.
That's
Skeletor.
sweet.
Skeletor had to reach out.
Although I don't remember Skeletor actually proactively reaching
didn't really
out. He was in
out.
a crystal, and He-Man got him out of it.
He did need help, but he did not ask for it. But we can learn things from that still, I guess, is the point.
One thing I do want to I came down pretty hard on Shigora, but once I'm a little jealous of him because just once I would like to say to someone who's woken me up, who dares to summon Damon from my slumber?
Who dares?
Who dares? And I'll also have a little cute mustache.
And then someone will be like, "It's me, Skeletor."
Oh, this is another instance of the sorceress. Shigora comes to take over Castle Grayskull, and she uses the last of her magic, and that's the only reason that she is taken hostage and then turned into his puppet that attacks He-Man. She's tough, but not as tough as Shigora.
Not as tough as the monsters, yeah.
Aye, there's the rub. Sorry, sorceress.
I think it is inherently misogynistic. There's an element to it, but also like He-Man does say up front he's the most powerful man in the universe. So
he is.
Of course, he can defeat all these characters and barely break a sweat pretty much every episode because it's a Superman situation. Like he's gonna prevail. Not only is he the hero, but even if he weren't, it doesn't matter. He's the most powerful man in the universe.
Also important to note: if he did break a sweat, it would up the rating on these cartoons because then it would just be too sexy. We have a man in fur underwear and
no moisture.
BDSM things. If he has any moisture on his body whatsoever, a sheen, anything, I will fucking turn this off and turn it to Care Bears faster than you can say Shigora.
So I had someone just kind of dabbing him between takes.
Right. The powder. Although there was one line, this is probably the first time I actually laughed during an episode, is that they're going, both Skeletor's crew and He-Man's posse, peeps, I believe you referred to them earlier, are going to Castle Grayskull to stop Shigura from tearing it apart. And He-Man says, "Follow us to Castle Grayskull." And Skeletor goes, "I know the way, He-Man. I've been there before." It's funny because he's always trying to take it over.
Yeah.
I don't know if you picked up on that. It's a little something for the fans that you probably wouldn't have picked up on in a casual viewing, but that's what Skeletor wants to do. He wants to take over Castle Grayskull for secrets. So let's do these last two motherfuckers. The Rainbow Warrior.
Season 2, episode 20, at least by the count of this. Skeletor, once again, our friend Skeletor, kidnaps everyone. And Queen Marlena is the only one left, and she pilots her old spaceship to rescue them.
And she uses a flying technique that she wanted to teach Teela, but Teela sort of brushed her off.
Yeah, it's basically straight from Top Gun. You see, we were inverted.
Well, she just did it. Basically, she inverted over them and then got behind them and then shot them in the ass.
Basically, her secret was just flipping.
Maverick!
Should be dogfighting them 101. I mean, I don't know. I don't fly planes, but
I don't have much.
This is the cold open you were talking about, because we get. This is the one where Skeletor is like basically Trapjaw and is it Whiplash? Or the two?
Yeah, I thought it was Beastman again.
Maybe it's Beastman, and they call Skeletor fat at some point.
They did because they were distracted. They were watching the jousting in Eternia via some sort of sphere that can do that. TV. Yeah. Essentially watching TV, and Skeletor's like, just going on about some new scheme, fill in the blanks, some sort of Mad Libs scheme he's got going, and they're not listening. And he says his patience is wearing thin, and Trapjaw's like, "I don't think you're too thin. If anything, you're too fat."
We also get Skeletor. I don't think it was to that, but Skeletor later in the episode goes, "What?" Whichever, like Skeletor's voice. I'm gonna probably use that in the future.
It's he did not have much of a personality in the first episode, the first season, and he still doesn't have much of a personality. But they're fainting towards a personality, and I
like it.
If you take me through a desert, eventually I will drink whatever water you give me. But let's not give away our verdicts.
We get the full legend of Mom here, which I appreciate. We get like the full story of how she was on a space mission and got like stranded on the planet of Eternia, and then basically Dad was like, "What's up, girl? Why don't you stay?" And we also learned that.
And I guess she's fine with that. She doesn't have any friends or family back on Earth.
Well, if she was on a space mission this far away from Earth, like they're dead. I mean,
you think it's a Planet of the Apes situation?
It's just the way time works, like. You think she went through a wormhole? You think?
I think that He-Man, the show, does not give two shits about how long it takes to get to another planet in another galaxy.
Oh, but you do think they care about a character's family?
Fair enough.
I feel like this show would care more about the time dilation than they would about the family.
That's true. They would go on and on and on about it, but never actually establish anyone's relationship with anyone else. What's in Castle Grayskull? Anyway, it's fabulous powers here.
Anyway,
this is my friend Orko. He's one third of the people who know my secrets. Let me introduce you to the other two. Come this way real quick. I don't know why he's talking. Why is he Marv Albert? I don't know why I'm doing this.
Johnny Gomes is 3 for 3 today.
Johnny Gomes.
Mama knows that he's He-Man. We get a little bit where he's like, "Mama," and she's like, "Adam, I trust you.
Mother knows.
A mother knows."
Okay, now it's too sexual. This is a homosexual laden show, not a heterosexual.
We all know it's a slippery slope, Damon. I'm just saying. I've seen porn.
You sleep with a certain amount of men, and then eventually you're sleeping with women. That's all I'm saying. Is a slippery slope.
That's just how slippery slopes work. Whatever you're scared of, whatever you're talking about, will lead there.
That's the slope mechanic. All slopes lead to that thing.
The lesson recap is listen to old people. they might have something valuable to say, including in this case, Queen Marlena.
Who delivers the lesson?
I don't remember.
I
didn't take notes on that. Sorry.
Probably Skeletor for all I know.
Yeah, really,
I did want to say,
if elders talk to you, you gotta listen.
I did, just to back into my thing about how terrible this animation is. Trapjaw has a mechanical arm, for those who are not familiar with him. He has a mechanical arm, which makes him a rare asymmetrical character on He-Man, which means when they flip his cell to have him point in the other direction, it's really obvious because all of a sudden his left arm is a mechanical arm and not his right arm.
I gotta be honest, I did not notice that.
I did.
I mean, I noticed the general crappiness of the animation, but that specific problem I didn't know.
I will say this is as feminist as He-Man gets, I imagine.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's definitely like not shaming Queen Marlena for having been an astronaut or having her own thing, but it also is she does kind of give it all up, but I don't know, like that's its own kind of feminism, right? She gives it up on, like, she's not against her will. She decides, like, I want to stay here and be the queen. And
I just meant even awesome. Her saving the
oh yeah,
she essentially saves the day with her little tactic. Did you know that you know how kings and queens like have the first, the second, the third? Mm-hmm. Do you know that this is hold on, let me count. 1, 2, 3 Marlenas. This is the Marlena the third.
He just keeps picking up Earth ladies.
That was a very deep Wallflowers cut to their song 3 Marlenas.
Okay. You know, I pretty much only made it to that one song.
Well, how many headlights was that? 1.
1. Okay.
It doesn't work as well as in the same format.
Okay, I got it. Problem with Power, season 2, episode 45. Skeletor, once again, he tricks. This is the darkest episode by far because he tricks.
Oh yeah,
He-Man.
this is weird.
He tricks He-Man into thinking he had killed a guy, and then He-Man gives up being He-Man for a while, and then eventually takes it back. But
it's the Superman 2 paradox. I've given up this thing forever until I need to do it again. Thank you.
it is It's not reversible at all unless I really want it to be.
This is a really this might be the best episode of the ones we watched because it was actually something I had never seen in a children's cartoon like this. But to the point where I was like, is this appropriate for children? So Skeletor finds a guy who looks suspiciously like Rocksteady from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
He's a goblin.
He is a goblin, which means, as we all know, we all took goblin biology. He does not have a heart and thus no heartbeat, which is a very specific thing that they set up at the beginning of this episode. I'm like, where are we going with this?
This is the
this
only
weird
way
heartbeat
this is going to
thing.
work. We have the kind of magic that can disguise a goblin as a man, but we don't have the kind of magic that can make a heartbeat just like not be able to be detected.
If Romeo and Juliet can figure it out, I'm fairly sure we can figure out some sort of story mechanic
they were like
to
15.
hide the fact that your heart's not beating. So then he disguises Rocksteady as just some man, and then Skeletor also disguises himself as the brother of that man, and then they build a really shoddy dimensional gate that then He-Man punches because he's an idiot. Was the feeling from the story I got was like, he's like, oh yeah, even though Man-at-Arms told me this was precariously built, I'm going to punch it.
At some point, he's going to punch it if we get him here.
Right.
So.
And he did. He punched it real good. And then they pretended that Rocksteady, the heartless Rocksteady, was underneath. And then He-Man is so stricken with grief. Now, this was interesting because it sort of talks about innocent bystanders in a superhero context, which especially with Marvel being like the monoculture right now is a very interesting thing to talk about in an 80s cartoon.
Right.
That being said, I couldn't help but to sort of try and figure this plan out from Skeletor's perspective. Skeletor, who, by the way, does not know that Prince Adam is He-Man and does not even know that He-Man has an alter ego whatsoever, that he can give up being He-Man. So his plan was to make He-Man believe he was dead, and he knew that would make He-Man
stop,
take a vacation from being He-Man.
I guess you could say, and I think I'm doing a little too much lifting for the show itself, that it's making, He-Man become the thing he hates the most, like a killer or,
Even though Skeletor rarely kills anyone either.
Well, yeah, we got to assume that Skeletor is off-screen killing people just to be evil. But it's not. It never happens in the show, of course.
No, he's just freeze-raying everyone and putting them in crystals or something.
Yeah.
I do want to hand it to He-Man got a new expression in this one, which was sadness. Because He-Man's face is constantly the same. No matter what he is expressing, his face looks exactly the same, except in this episode, he was sad, and Tyler pointed out, they put shadows on him in the sad part.
Wow.
Made it almost look like a well-animated show.
He flings his penis sword into a crevasse, and yet it was pretty easy to get back.
Also, did you catch the racial slur that Teela threw at Skeletor?
What? No.
Yeah, she says, and no magic, evil face.
Oh,
it's just like, come on, let's just...
That's his face.
He's sensitive about... You can see... Look at how much he works out. You think he's not sensitive about the fact that he has no muscles on his face?
Skeletor went full Carrot Top. He was so obsessed. That's so funny. The lesson recap at the end was just basically basic safety lessons. It was unrelated, which I think is probably fine, because sometimes it would be difficult to be like, if you accidentally kill someone, tell the police immediately.
That would be. If you ever crush a man with the side of a dimensional portal, here's what you do. Check for a pulse. Begin mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
We didn't watch the last episode, but I did look at the recap of it, because it just
the final episode of the series.
Yeah, because all cartoons of this era, it just kind of ends. They just stopped making them. There's no big finale. We don't say goodbye to all.
It's not like Skeletor and He-Man kiss at the end,
right? But those are the episodes we watch. Big points. Listen.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about it.
This is not our verdict. This is just bigger points about the series in general.
I just want to talk about the animation. That's
you and me both, buddy.
One of the most noticeable things, and you're an artist, so you're probably pickier than most people would be. But it is noticeably, they had to have knocked out a single season in 2 weeks. It has to be a speed thing, right? No shade on the animators. They're probably just trying to get shit done. They're probably on a crazy timeline, crazy cheap. They're like, listen, you have $500. It's like Supermarket Sweep, but for drawing cartoons. You have $500.
You have 50 seconds because you answered all the questions correctly.
And the time starts as soon as I finish this sentence.
This is absolutely terrible animation. It reminded me very much of Hanna-Barbera, which I've referenced several times. But even the running animation where they're in profile whenever they're running across a landscape, it's very like Scooby-Doo and the mystery gang or whatever their name is runs across the screen. They're always in that sort of block formation where they're all running. And that's how it feels when Teela and He-Man and all the rest are running across the fetid landscapes of Castle Grayskull. And on the one hand, I give Scooby-Doo more of a pass because Scooby-Doo is a hijinks, zany cartoon show. It's a comedy show. And this is this supposed high fantasy, lore heavy thing. And it just feels it's cheap, and they reuse animation constantly. The models are all the same. If you just watch the opening, if you just watch the first episode and a half, you've probably seen 85% of the animation that is used throughout this series. It's so repetitive and shitty that it just wears you down. Plus, then there are whole blocks of sequences, primarily, him transmogrifying into He-Man every episode, that take huge blocks of time that they can just sort of ignore. It reminded me in those contexts of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which sort of follows the same beats of, oh no, there's a weird monster in Angel Grove. Let's go fight him. Oh no, that didn't work. Let's put on our Power Rangers outfits. Oh no, that didn't work. Let's get out our Zords, but don't connect them yet. That's still not working. Let's combine into the Megazord, and now we have fought him and we've defeated him. And all those scenes of like the Zords coming out or them holding their weird like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers coins out in front of them. I'm like, oh, I can't imagine how much time this is just eating up of the runtime of a 21-minute show.
Yeah. There's like 11 minutes of new stuff in each episode.
Yeah.
And the rest is all reused. Yeah.
It's crazy how cheap everything looks. And especially when you do get those one-off characters that it's so obvious that they just sort of like, just draw the simplest thing possible so we can get it done.
Yeah. You mentioned the lore. Did you have any general thoughts about?
It's just, I mean, I am a nerd. I like fantasy and I like sci-fi stuff.
You don't say that about my friend Damon.
And I have a lot of friends who are creative that I've had throughout my life and fancy themselves writers of such things. And you sometimes have to sit and read their takes on those things. Sometimes you've even written some yourself. And it's the worst of those. I mean, fantasy and sci-fi, I feel like, is like the triple Lutz of like writing, because you have to do so many things that a lot of just normal writers don't have to do. You have to create a whole world and a whole history, and you have to create the rules of those worlds while also like doing it in prose that is not absolutely terrible.
Right. You're inherently making a bit more world because you have to build worlds. You have to
And then those worlds probably don't function like our world does, and you'll have to explain how that works.
Yeah.
And like I'll use Lord of the Rings as an example because, I mean, I know that fantasy isn't for everyone necessarily, but Lord of the Rings starts out in Hobbiton, which, albeit they're small little people, it's otherwise an agrarian like English town. And you would, if you were an English reader in the 1940s and 50s, you'd be like, I kind of recognize this. They work in the fields, then they go to the pub. I got it. And then it slowly opens up after that. This is just like, I need the trident of Flim Flam, and we need to get to the Tower of to get to the crystal seas of to fight the dark beats of my fondness fest. And I'm like, who are you talking about? And who is Tila to He-Man? Can you just at least establish who these two people are?
Yeah, it just kind of plops down in the middle. And I think that it's interesting that this became so popular, and so I was so into it as a kid. I wonder how much I knew what was going on, or if I was just like, this is cool. You know what I mean?
I think there is a reason that we had very fuzzy we remember watching He-Man and maybe playing with He-Man, but we do not remember the elements of He-Man. Like, I remember that the Tiny Toons went to Acme University to get their Toon degree, because that's established in the fucking song, for one thing. But, like, I understand, like, this universe. He-Man is just like, just throw a bunch of gobbledygook, and if you could introduce a new character each episode so we can sell a new toy, that would be ideal. Thank you.
There really is. The character is just like, it's like a waterfall. There's always, and it's possible that we just missed all of the first episodes, but it seems like they're just there. And then
that one, when I did go to the first episode, there is a scene where Skeletor calls his evil board of directors or whatever the fuck they are to his to Snake Mountain, and he says, "Merman from the," I don't know wherever the fuck Merman's from, and then he calls them all by name, and I'm like, okay, I see you're trying to do something. That being said, like, I mean, I couldn't tell you. I mean, we had fun with Ram Man because there's such a void to every character. Like He-Man, I couldn't tell you anything about him other than he is really tan and vaguely good and courageous.
Yeah. But
like, there is nothing, he is not funny. He is not scared of anything. Like, there's nothing interesting about He-Man. There's not even really, if you took He-Man's dialogue and put it in Tila's mouth, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. No one is particularly different from each other except from like really exaggerated characters like Orko and Cringer.
Right.
Everyone's just sort of generic good guy or generic bad guy, and I couldn't tell the difference between them if you asked me to.
I don't know. In the episodes we watched, we did get a little bit more from Tila, just exploring her family. Like, we got a little bit more of her personality. Right. Like, she's hard-headed, and she, like, like is independent and strong and all this kind of stuff that like we got more from her in that one episode that I ever saw from He-Man in any of these. Although you do get like glimpses of it, like because mostly from Tila being like fed up with Adam, like he does play Adam a bit more oafish and like a Bruce Wayne type character where he's like just like a spoiled rich kid, which I think is a really interesting dynamic that I actually wish I had more of, from these episodes. Because I'm like, that's sort of like when you see Clark Kent and Superman, it's ridiculous, right? Because they're very literally all he does is put on a pair of glasses. But when you see Christopher Reeve do it in those Superman movies, like you kind of, maybe it's still maybe a stretch that people wouldn't recognize, but it still is like he does a really good job of like making them seem different.
His whole like posture changes when he becomes Clark Kent, which is, I mean, we already gushed about Christopher Reeve's performance when we did our episode on Superman, but I mean, and that's something they did. But when you're doing really cheap animation where you're just reskinning the He-Man, looking at the camera cell to look like Prince Adam, you're not going to get that same vibe.
Yeah. What did you think? Did you notice the music? Did you?
Oh my God. And because again, it has that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It has that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers like template quality where it's like, this is what happens in the episode. You get a MacGuffin. Skeletor is trying to get the MacGuffin. Prince Adam changes into He-Man. He stops him from getting the MacGuffin. That music, there's no change in the music. It's always, the minute he turns into He-Man, it's and every fight scene is to that song. I'm like, I got it. Please, anything else would be fine. Violins, perhaps?
I did kind of like it though. It felt like not as good as this, but like when Indiana Jones like does something heroic and that theme comes in,
right?
Like, and you're like, yeah. I didn't like. I'm giving it a little bit too much credit, but like it did have a little bit of that quality because it would be when they start kicking ass, that theme would kick in, and you're like, okay, now the good guys are gonna win. And that's
I thought it was
kind of comforting. It's like
too. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's like comfort food. You know what I mean? You're like, I'm not saying that McDonald's is good. I'm saying that it makes me happy to eat it right now.
I can understand that. I guess I thought it was a little too kind of generic music to get like super into. And even Indiana Jones at least has different music play when they're in. Well, even like there are different songs that when the Indiana Jones theme starts, you're like, yeah, there's like a difference. Yeah. You know what's in store right now.
There was a little bit like Tila had a theme, and I remember it being really wacky. But I don't know if they just gave up on that or if I just didn't notice it as much. But I remember when early on when like we did the Tila episode, there was like this is out. This is different. But it wasn't a thing that like continued throughout. I mean, they did like whenever like Cringer's talking, there's usually like a wink, right, like this kind of like Hanna-Barbera.
Philip Glass came in for his amelodic piece on Cringer. Oh, that does remind me that the sound effects are also super wacky.
Yes,
for being such a action adventure like high fantasy thing, the sound effects are very. Super Mario Brothers Super Show. There's even like that sort of waggle noise when Shaggy and Scooby would be running in place because they're so scared that they forgot to run forward.
Yeah,
it's very like I don't know. Maybe this was just like a trope where in the 80s they didn't even think about it. Like cartoons have these sound effects. Put the sound effects in. Whereas now I think they'd be like, well, we don't need those sound effects for this.
No, you get the idea.
Also, the other thing is that the action is really boring.
Yes. It's very slow.
It's very slow because I think the animation is so cheap, so it's always a little herky-jerky. And also, like, there is probably the censorship seems strong, but like, hey, don't do a lot of sword fighting because we don't want kids stabbing each other. So it seems like that would be the reason the show exists, and it seems very clunky.
Yeah.
Although we know what the reason this show exists is to sell me toys, which it unfortunately was very effective at.
Yes, and the that's probably the biggest reason. The second biggest is to spread gay subtext. So we got to talk about that.
I was actually disappointed. I really wanted, as I said during a Stargate episode, I always wanted to be gayer, and this seemed like it has a very visual gay look where it's just like beefcakes upon beefcakes. But then everyone's so bland that it can't even be like sort of campy, guilty pleasure fun. It's just everyone's in BDSM outfits, but it's so boring that even to try and enjoy it in like sort of a silly Mystery Science Theater way is not an enjoyable feeling. Like I just got bored.
There's some like things out there, and to be fair, I didn't go into like this is not my doctoral thesis, right? I didn't go in depth, but like there's some people out there saying, you know, that the animators and the writers like purposefully like put more subtext in, not to like in a nefarious purpose, but just because they didn't have, you know, a place to express it, and if this would felt like a fun, campy, like safe place to just kind of like make it even more camp. And it is very campy, and I kind of see that, but I'm also like that sentiment feels a little retroactive to me. And maybe that's just me being like, I didn't notice it when I was 5 because I was 5. And maybe that's just me pretending like I'm smarter than I am or something. But like that feels like later on you were like,
never let that stop you. Always pretend you're smarter than you are.
Yeah, I started a podcast just to prove
it's my life motto.
But you know what I mean? Like it feels like later on when it was like safer to be out or safer to like express yourself, they went, yeah, we put those in there because X, Y, and Z. Or do you know, you never know like what people were thinking in the moment, but it's like, I don't know about all that. Like
I feel that way. This may be more of a hot take, but I feel that way when people are like, oh, you know, the guy who created Bert and Ernie, he wanted them to be gay. You know, and the guy who did create Bert and Ernie was a gay man, and he has gone on the record saying, "Oh yeah, I created them to be a gay couple, but you know, I couldn't say that explicitly." And I'm like, "Did you? Am I really supposed to believe that you created Bert and Ernie to be an openly gay couple living together?" Well, I don't know. I always, it's kind of like the Dumbledore thing where it's very convenient to, after the fact, after the media has been created, and it's like, oh, yeah, I always meant for him to be gay. Don't I seem so interesting now? I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah, someone was talking about like songwriting, and they're like, make it make sense to you first, and then look for themes later. You know what I mean? And I think that's like, even as a creator, not even like, obviously if you're analyzing someone else's creation, you can kind of find themes that were maybe not even intentional. That doesn't mean they're not there.
No, yeah, absolutely. I'm very much an adherent of that. Experiencing media is also a creative process, so you can see themes that are there, and that doesn't make them less valid just because, you know, Lou Schreiber, who created He-Man, didn't intend for there be a huge Tom of Finland BDSM vibe that goes through He-Man.
Yeah, I guess that's part of it too. It's just that there's hundreds of people involved in this to create this cartoon, and so it's like, how many people were in this? In like this on the sort of like gay subtext thing, and again, it doesn't negate it. I don't.
How many Hollywood types in 1983 were in on the gay subtext you were making into a kids show? How many people were in on this conspiracy?
Fair enough. And again, I don't. Even if there were that much, like if it were intentional, I don't see anything nefarious in that. They were saying like, you know, this would be a fun way to express ourselves and also still make a profitable children's show, which, you know, mission accomplished if it did, you know.
Obviously.
I'm not saying like it's nefarious or even, you know, like that someone was like, I'm gay because of He-Man. You know, that's not how it works.
I can't remember if I said this in the introduction or not, but I said I did a cartoon recently of He-Man, and I was, you know, looking at all these pictures of He-Man to, you know, capture the style of it.
For work.
It was for work, and that's why I saved them to my computer. But I realized, like, I was drawing, like, He-Man's body, and I was like, oh, if he had nipples, I probably would have come out at, like, 6 years old. Like, they removed all the appropriate parts so that I wouldn't have been completely over-sexualized as a kid. I just one more thing. I did watch an extra episode because one of the podcasts I listened to, gayest episode ever that I was telling you about. They're doing an episode on an episode of He-Man. Don't say episode of episode. So I watched an extra episode so I can listen to their piece on that. Yeah. I also deliberately did not listen to their episode so that I could come in fresh. I don't want to be tainted.
Right.
And they put it to their listeners to pick the gayest episode of He-Man. So I watched that one where He-Man gets his memory wiped and sucked into another dimension where there are animal people.
Wow.
Where there are animal people, and it's like an anti-pollution thing. But there is a sort of gay acting bunny in it who keeps commenting on He-Man's muscles. And He-Man does have to ride a rocket at one point. Oh, so gay. Those are that was the most explicit subtext I saw. Yeah, he rides a rocket as you'd expect him to, I might add.
I will say this, like, whether it's retroactive or, intentional in the moment, like, it's definitely there. I see it all over the place. So if it wasn't intentional, it's almost, at least somewhat intentional. It's a little bit odd. You know what I mean?
It's very odd that in the early 80s, we had a whole cartoon for kids about all these jacked up men who are more or less scantily clad, and then women who are fairly in the realm of comic book superhero women are fairly conservatively clad. They're in leotards, but their bellies aren't out. So I feel like that in the comic book world, that's, what are you, a nun or something? Why ain't you got a bad midriff? Why isn't your back make a weird S shape? Says Rob Liefeld. I don't know. It is very odd. I'm not saying that there isn't a subtext. Right. I just was like, when I watched it, I was like, oh, here we go. And then I was surprised by how bored I was the entire time.
Yes. Speaking of, let's go to the verdict, shall we? Damon Xanthopoulos.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Give us your verdict.
You called me. Skeletor. Oh, God. You've taken over the podcast again. For its secrets, I imagine. For the secrets of the podcast.
What?
My verdict is your inner child is an idiot. This is...
Whoa.
One of the worst things we've had to watch for the podcast. This is some of the most cynical claptrap that I can't believe that I was spoon-fed as a kid and pretended to enjoy. This is terrible writing. It's shitty animation. It's just absolutely the bottom of the barrel in terms of what may be a very deep barrel of a decade of children's animation. This is bad. This is a bad show. It is not good. And just by the sheer nostalgia that people have, and the fact that I stumbled upon articles of people getting up in arms about the series that's on Netflix that just aired, I think last month, started going on Netflix. I'm like, who cares? Like, there are people that are angry that Kevin Smith ruined the lore of He-Man. I'm like, fuck you. Go watch this show and think about what you've done. Tyler was looking up, because he was looking up the Wikipedia while we were watching about it, because we were both bored. And he was like, wait, was there a live action movie? And I said, yeah, there was a live action movie with Dolph Lundgren and Richard Nixon, meaning Frank Langella.
I was like, what?
Richard Nixon.
Me? Oh.
And then He-Man punched him. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, they made it. And it's one of those cheapo things where they just send He-Man to Earth so they don't have to build as many sets. Yeah. And he was looking at contemporaneous reviews, like people now watching Masters of the Universe, the Masters of the Universe movie. I don't remember what year it came out in. And he was saying that people said, this movie just doesn't really have a reason for existing. It doesn't have a raison d'art. And I was like, have they watched this piece of shit? This thing makes no sense. It's just a bunch of stuff that's happening with a shitty animation. Like, at least they put Frank Langella in fucking makeup. Like, they made an effort. This is terrible. And I will fight anyone on the streets of Eternia that says otherwise. This is
Thank you for putting
bad...
it of Eternia so you didn't have to have a real fight with someone.
Oh, that was a close call. Everything about it is just terrible. Like, the backgrounds are just like bland, blasé rocks and shit. Castle Grayskull is just a place where a bird woman lives. Like, why is it so important? The show doesn't care, but I'm supposed to. The characters are all boring. The animation is shitty. The stories are just like, if you took Marvel things and just crammed them into 20 minutes and just cut out anyone like making a joke or anything, it's just MacGuffin this, MacGuffin that, place that, done. And here's what we learned, and let me just show you 3 minutes of animation you just saw again. This is a piece of shit. Your inner child is an idiot.
I'm gonna hold for applause. Still holding. I feel like you removed my armored chest plate and ripped my heart out.
Your battle damaged DJ.
My battle, I'm heart damaged DJ. This is such an important part of my childhood. And it was garbage, switcheroo. This is a terrible, terrible show. I 100% agree with you. The animation is so bad. There were moments when they were close to having something. You know, when those little things we pointed out of like Skeletor starting to have a personality, and the sort of like the story with Queen Marlena was interesting. There were like, but I think those. Me remembering those and me sort of highlighting those is more indicative of what you said of just like, you know, being in a desert and any sort of shit water you give us. It's just like there's anything at some point is just like, oh, thank God. There's some character development or there's some joke or some interesting. It's also like, you know, I don't expect a children's show from the 80s to like make me have a laugh riot, but it's not like, it's not funny at all either. So it's
not fun.
It's not particularly fun, and the sort of fun characters, like, intended to be fun, it seems like Cringer. Now I'm just worried about his whole existence because they planted that seed of him not wanting to change into Battle Cat, and then Battle Cat having a completely different personality. I'm really disturbed by that, Damon.
It's fucked up. It's fucked up. He doesn't have agency over being sent into battle? Like, that's insane.
It's really messed up. Yeah. Your inner child's an idiot. Don't watch this. I'm looking forward to
actually,
seeing the new
if you are a straight white man who's waxing rhapsodic about this, I want you to watch it. I want you to watch all 130 episodes, you jackass, and then tell me that Kevin Smith ruined it.
Other white men grew up in the 80s. I'm with you. I thought this was great when I was 5 and I had all the toys, but this is very bad. What do you think, everybody? Email us, yourinnerchildisanIdiot@gmail.com. You can text us or leave us a voicemail, 615-576-0525. You can find us on all the social medias and all that good stuff. And I want to thank my friend Ross Weaver for the use of his song Top of Two for our ad music. I want to thank Benny Goldstein for editing this episode. And I want to thank our current patrons, including
Beth Surmont,
David Mort,
Jonathon Day,
Just Cuz,
Scalfasaurus,
Dr. Malcolm's Heaving Bosom,
the supreme ruler of this podcast,
Other Tuggle,
Tyler Richardson,
Jean-Luc Picard, Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah, come on, he's not a lieutenant, he's a captain. Karen Curd,
Lindsey Nell,
the Zesty,
Jacob _Grimm,
Particle Man,
Demon's Australian accent,
dramatically placed hot dog,
Larissa Maestro,
T. Smith,
Jeremy Powlen,
Kevin from Cleveland,
His Honor the Mayor,
and of course, Dan McIntyre.
Thank you all very, very, very much. We really appreciate your support. And if you want to become a patron like them, yourinnerchildisanIdiot.com. So I'll tell you what, I will be He-Man and you be Skeletor at the end of this episode. And you can read the ingredients to the cheesecake that you're making.
Ah, thank you, you boob. First off,
You'll never get away with this.
You start out with 9 graham crackers and put them in a food processor, and then get them into a fine sandy batter. louder.